jets. Bill Gates appears, various other people and personages rub elbows with each other and sip white wine and drink lattes and whatever else they do and eat caviar, and they discuss the state of the world. The current co-chair of the meeting, who is the former UN Secretary Kofi Annan, said that the credit crunch will provide an opportunity to address not just the immediate global financial issues, but for the World Economic Forum to address a broader agenda, such as increasingly urgent economic, environmental, food, and human development issues. Well, who's going to be the introductory and welcoming speaker for that event? That well-known humanitarian himself, Russian President, he's the Russian Prime Minister these days. Actually, he's rumored to hold both hats as well as the hat he had on there. Vladimir Putin. We'll see what Mr. Putin has to say. Come a long way. We've elected an African-American for president last night, and then a former KGB operative is welcoming the World Economic Forum. Here's a story that came out yesterday, but we didn't notice it, and a number of other people didn't notice it. It was brought to our attention this morning. It was released on Bloomberg. Credit default swap traders wagered the most on debt of Italy, Spain, and Deutsche Bank. This is according to a Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation report that gives the broadest data yet on the unregulated market. Here is a schematic of a typical credit default. You see default protection buyer on the left, default protection seller on the right. You see the flows of money. Nowhere in there do you see anybody who actually owns the bond. This is a bet made on a current transaction that neither party holds a stake in at the moment. So what we have now is a report from the DTCC, which is the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, that says a total of $33.6 trillion of transactions are outstanding on governments, companies, and asset-backed securities worldwide. If you cancel out overlapping trade, investors have taken out a net of $22.7 billion of contracts based on Italy's debt, $16.7 billion against Spain's debt, and $12.5 billion on Deutsche Bank of Frankfurt's debt. And remember, these are wagers that have been taken out on the success or prospective failure of these various sovereign entities, and in the case of Deutsche Bank, of a commercial company. The entities themselves have no idea that their solvency is being bet upon by casino-like operatives in the financial world. According to Philip Gistakis of Munich-based credit analyst UniCredit, the bigger the outstanding amount of debt, the bigger the volume of credit default swaps is. Sovereign countries have huge debts outstanding. Deutsche Bank is a big company and they have a huge balance sheet. So it's quite understandable it's at the top of the list. The level of credit default swaps reported by the DTCC is smaller than previous estimates. The Bank for International Settlements back in May had estimated contracts of about $58 trillion outstanding. Trading in credit default swaps, which pay the buyer face value in exchange for the underlying security should a borrower fail to adhere to its debt agreements, exploded 100-fold during the past decade. The swaps market has moved beyond its origins of protecting banks from loan losses to a way for hedge funds, insurance companies, and asset managers to speculate on the creditworthiness of companies, governments, and other borrowers, including homeowners. The collapse of Lehman Brothers contributed to a decline in financial markets last month because no one knew how many credit default swap contracts were outstanding, held by Lehman Brothers. They're private contracts written between two parties. They don't trade on an exchange. They're not processed through a central clearinghouse, and it's virtually impossible for the public to assess the amount wagered on the debt. Estimates ranged as high as $400 billion for Lehman Brothers, although the actual amount fortunately turned out to be $72 billion. In total, about $15.5 trillion of transactions were linked to individual corporate, sovereign, and asset-backed bonds worldwide at the end of October, according to the DTCC. About $14.8 trillion of that was tied to indexes. Among companies, GE Capital Corporation, Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, and Goldman had the biggest dollar amount of contracts tied to their debt on a net basis. So in other words, those companies were the biggest ones being bet upon by various people wagering. Turkey Italy, Brazil, Russia, GMAC, and Merrill Lynch had the biggest gross amount of contracts outstanding on their debt. Turkey alone had about $189 billion of credit default swaps written against its debt. That means there was $189 billion of bets that the Turkish national government would not be able to pay its bonds. This is crazy. Stock market's down about 140 points. We'll go to a word from our commercial sponsors. Thank you.
Every day, the world wakes up and goes to work, pursuing the unique opportunities that lead the global economy forward. The complexity and close connectivity of today's global marketplace is a true modern miracle that can create unparalleled success. But it takes confidence, passion, innovation, and understanding. Every day, the world wakes up and goes to work, pursuing the unique opportunities that lead the global economy forward. The complexity and close connectivity of today's global marketplace is a true modern miracle that can create unparalleled success. But it takes confidence, passion, innovation, and understanding.
Enabling opportunity.
Protecting capital.
Engineering innovation.
Investing in your future.
Ensuring continuity.
Finding the right balance.
It takes Aon.
Global warming. Some say irreversible consequences are 30 years away. 30 years? That won't affect me.
Together, New Yorkers can fight global warming right now, before it's too late.
There was a horrendous incident on the Autobahn in Germany near the northern city of Hanover last night in Europe. 20 people at least died after a passenger supposedly sneaked a cigarette in the bathroom of a bus. Survivors told authorities that the fire broke out in the bathroom of the bus as it drove down the A2 highway after a person apparently smoked a cigarette there. When the door was opened, flames shot out and quickly engulfed the bus. Passengers sitting close to the exit were able to get out, but the others had no chance, said the police. The bus was owned by the Hanover-based company Mommmeyer, M-O-M-M-E-Y-E-R, and the bus was on its way back to Hanover when it encountered the fire at about 8:45 p.m. local time last night. German police, we have an update on this now, are now saying that it may not have been, the blaze may not have been the result of a smoker in the bathroom, but in fact the fire might have been sparked by a spark coming from the undercarriage of the vehicle. They're checking that now, but apparently they have a witness who said that they saw sparks coming from underneath the bus. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. That would certainly have a manufacturer's liability component to this. Also in Mexico yesterday, a Learjet 45, let me make sure I have this right, a Learjet 45 owned by the Mexican government crashed into a Mexico City street. On board was the former drug czar of Mexico, as well as the country's top point man in the war against drug trafficking. Officials said that the crash yesterday appeared to be an accident. That's still being confirmed so far by reports before we came on air. But on board and killed was the Interior Secretary of Mexico, Juan Camilo Moreno, as well as the former anti-drug prosecutor Jose Luis Santiago, and 6 others on board. Moreno, who was 37 years old, is one of President Felipe Calderon's closest advisors. He was in charge of the country's security. Meanwhile, in Sweden yesterday, a homemade bomb exploded at a hotel in the central Swedish city of Västerås, seriously injuring 1 person. Swedish police described the bomb as a homemade device that used gunpowder. They say that it went off in the kitchen of a hotel near the Västerås airport just after 9 p.m. Swedish time last night, causing a small fire that was quickly evacuated. Swedish news agency TT reported that the injured person was a student in the kitchen trying to build a bomb